talking about peaks and troughs brings me to your signing of Chris Eubank Jr.
Yeah.
Walk me through the thinking behind that and how that's happened.
Well, I don't think it requires too much thought. I think you're looking at someone that, outside of AJ and Fury, for me, is the biggest name in British boxing. Someone that still wants to achieve what he's not achieved in this sport, still feels his biggest fights are ahead of him. Someone that, since we've signed him, I mean, he's on Good Morning Britain tomorrow. I can't get anyone on Good Morning Britain. And I'm not saying that's a big thing, but I'm saying this is the level of star power that he brings. And so for us, I'm absolutely delighted. I think he gets a lot of criticism. I believe, I know from you as well, but I think a lot of it is unfair. And I think this is a guy that does take fights and that does go into fights.
He said it gives him a lot of freedom signing with you and being with Sky Sports, etc. I mean, what is his involvement with boxing? Is he now part of the business, or is he just signed? Have you just signed him up as his promoter?
Look, we try. I'm not an old school promoter in the sense where I say to my fighter, "This is what you're doing. See you later. This is your purse. See you. Look at your contract." And you ask any of the guys that are with me, it's a collaborative process. How do we grow you? How do we grow your brand? Whether it's Ben, whether it's Fraser, whether it's Chris now. And so I think he can see, given he's the star name, in most of his fights, unless he fights Canelo, he's probably going to be the A side. And so he wants that freedom where he can see what the show earns, where he can see what he can generate, where he can see what his options are. And to be honest, I find him extremely intelligent.
Why is he scratching his backside for the last 12 months?
I think he's had, when leaving a promoter, and I'm not getting involved in anyone else's business, it means that there might be complications as to what's going on behind the scenes, what the fallout might have been, why you can't get back in the ring so quickly. And I think that happens in boxing a lot. And I think that's all this has been. And so for him to get back out and for him to get back in the ring is a massive relief.
When he gets back out, he's boxing Ziametta, and there's been a lot of upset about that. You know, we thought he was going to get the Canelo fight, and there's been, people saying Chris Eubank Jr. has been calling out all the big names, and we never seem to get him in with the big names. I suppose the question I'm going to ask you is, all right, we give him this fight against Ziametta. Do we get a big name after that? Is it for a world title fight after that?
Yeah, I don't understand.
Surely it's got to be at some point.
But just because I was thinking about what Simon was saying to me the other day, and that Joshua took, obviously off the back of Usyk, I think we went Franklin, and we went Helenius, and we went Ngannou.
We went Wallin first.
Wallin. Well, these are guys because he was changing trainer, he wanted to get active, he wanted to this, he wanted to build back up.
Well, it was a rebuilding process. It was a real building process.
He's had a year out the ring. He's not going to jump in, as I said before, to a Canelo on 6 or 7 weeks' notice. He gets a Ziametta fight, which everyone can talk about. It's not maybe the name. This is a very good fighter for an IBO world title, and he gets his platform to go on to bigger things.
Because I understand your point of view, right? And in a minute, I'm going to ask you to stand up your observation. I've been critical of Chris Eubank Jr. Because it'd be interesting to see what you say. I've said that's critical. But I understand why you don't want to put him in or why he doesn't want to go in. Because let's be fair, we've listened to him endlessly tell us he's going to fight for world titles. All that people do is hoist him by his own words because he's the one that says it, right? And then every time there's an opportunity, we don't seem to see him in with it. So let's say that we give him a pass on the fact that this is a tune-up fight and we accept that. That leads to where? And in short order,
as you know, I can't comment on what the previous career has been.
Fine, we'll comment on what you're going to do next.
So unless he's going to get one of the big names that we've talked about, whether it's Canelo, whether it's Crawford, whether it's Ben, whether it's Billy Joe Saunders, he has to fight for a world title in his next fight.
Exactly.
In his next fight. And I completely agree. And that we will do absolutely everything to make that happen. So unless it's one of the big names where it's ridiculous money, because of that's what comes with Chris Eubank Jr., then it has to be a world title next.
So do you believe he can win a world title, Chris Eubank Jr.? Do you think he's capable?
Depends who... I mean, we've asked George Groves this, who's fought him. Billy Joe Saunders doesn't have a good thing to say about him, so he's not going to give him any compliments anyway.
Yeah.
Depends who you put him in against. If you manage his career and create an opportunity for him so that the right fight comes along against a champion that he might be able to beat or for a vacant belt, then I don't see why not. But if you're asking me, does he win against some of the best fighters in 160 and 168? No, I don't think so. I think if he was going to have won a world title, he would have won it before he was 34. Yeah. He wouldn't be losing to Liam Smith. He wouldn't be losing to Billy Joe Saunders.
Liam Smith, who's a former world champion.
Janibek
yes, weight class is way beneath
WBA,
him.
Isn't it? WBA. Janibek was the WBA champion.
He's got 2.
Yeah, right. So he's struggling to make weight.
It's a BO, I think, and
yeah, and I think that them titles may well become vacated. Is that the route for you? Is that the path that you're thinking maybe, because he is going to relinquish those once a fighter passes out because he's struggling to make weight? He's not going back there again.
We were already.
I think that's way too dangerous. Them titles are going to get relinquished.
You'd expect them to become vacant, but we've also been in talks with Erislandy Lara, who's a fight that we fancy as well. And so Chris has said to me, I want the world title. Like he said, yes, he's got his names, but he wants a world title. Was it going to be his first fight back after a year?
No, we've covered that.
So I'm saying now, if it's not one of the big names, it has to be a world title next.
If it becomes for one of the vacant titles, sorry, Simon, if it becomes one of the vacant titles, he's obviously world ranked very high with the WBA. I think he's #1 or whatever. Who would it be against? Like who on paper right now? What would the opponent be if it was for the vacant title?
Well, you've got Lara and Adames, who are the current world holders. You'd be up to the governing bodies who they order next if Janibek vacates.
So, but how does it look in the rankings?
I'm
not putting you on the pressure.
Or is it up to Turki Al-Sheikh?
There's domestic fighters.
Maybe he can make that one.
But I think for Chris, as I said, he wants the big nights, he wants the big names. If it's not a big name next, it will be.
Can I just qualify this big names? Who are we saying are big names? What?
Canelo.
Right, OK, which he doesn't, which he's already not wanted to fight.
Crawford, who's talked about coming up to middleweight.
Right, okie dokie.
Billy Joe Saunders.
So you want him up 2 weight classes?
Billy Joe Saunders.
Right, who's, 27?
I don't
Conor Ben. And at the end
of the... banned.
Yeah, and so if they're not available next, I believe he'll fight for a world title next. I'm just saying, if we're going to be, if we get offered and we're sat with, and I know the option of fighting for a world title against a relatively unnamed opponent or not known opponent in comparison to Chris Eubank Jr. status versus one of the 4 I've just mentioned in his next fight, then it's going to be a no-brainer. I'm saying failing that, he'll fight for a world title next. He has to.
It doesn't matter if there's a world title on the line, then that's what he goes for because that's the ultimate goal. It doesn't matter what the name is. I'm just intrigued.
I think for Chris,
I just wonder where
it lays.
He's
not going to be. And I've heard this all before, and I've seen Adam Cattrall sat on here saying that he should basically go and do what a fan wants him to do and this and that.
No, it's a business.
Chris is going to do what's best for him. And that's it. And whether I want him to fight for a world title or fight Billy Joe Saunders or Conor Ben or Canelo for 10 million, he's going to choose what's best for him, and rightfully so.
But Ben, with respect, the only reason people like Adam Cattrall, and maybe to a lesser degree myself, say these things, is because we've heard all this before. So what Chris gets judged by is what's come out of his mouth before. No one's interested in his poker, and no one's interested in his house in Las Vegas. Yeah. They're interested in what he says he's going to do. And I'll let you off the response to the fact that I've criticised Chris Eubank Jr. because you won't be able to find any. You'll just find observations that are based upon fact.